All right, welcome back everybody here to Kickin It With Knuble, episode 3. Mike, we're back. Apologies from myself from last week because I totally botched the last episode. We didn't have an episode last week. I had a little bit of a technical issue on my end with my microphone. Everything should be sounding better right now. And Mike, we're back. We're energized.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have anything to do with it. So
yeah, you just blame me for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, we're back, Mike. Lots to talk about. I know last week a lot of the topic for the episode that didn't come out was Kolosov from finally coming over, Luchanko kind of making the team, all that kind of jazz. As for Kolosov, I'll start there, and then we'll kind of get into Luchanko, a couple other things. So Kolosov played last night against the Islanders, played probably half the game, came in about like 9 minutes or so left in the second period. Looked pretty good. I mean, I was there at UBS. He was solid. I mean, he didn't, face a ton of shots. The Flyers didn't really have their best lineup. It was really like, it kind of felt like the lineup that was like, throw these guys out here so other guys don't get hurt kind of thing. It was a lot of like bottom six, fourth line kind of guys. They had 3 guys that they already had cut in camp play. So not necessarily the best lineup. They lost 4-3 with a play like the last like 50 seconds. It was just like a bad goal to give up. But regardless, Kolosov came in. That was probably the biggest story from last night's game, was just him finally getting in the net and playing after everything that kind of went on. That was like, he was either homesick or didn't want to come to Philly and this whole thing. And so he's here. He played. Any thoughts on just the whole Kolosov situation and now just him kind of coming over and finally being able to kind of put this whole thing to bed?
Well, it's a lot in 1 week, right? Like probably a week ago, it was like, the report is he's coming over, and when you get on the ice, you arrive in a town, and who knows where he's at with everything and what sort of deal or promises were made to get him to come over and where he's at with things and how he's kind of come to terms with stuff. And then, have a couple of days on ice, and it's totally not unfamiliar territory walking in the building or the rink, and at least in Voorhees and stuff, and it's at least somewhat comfortable in the people, some faces, and then just to hustle up and then travel the same day as you play up in New York, and then split time too. It's not easy to sit there for a period and a half and come in and play.
Yeah.
So, it's already that's a pretty demanding day, a demanding 4 or 5 days since he's been here. So. But like you said, out of a lineup that you wouldn't consider top notch, there was something to, that a lot of people were interested to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially too, because he kind of just came in and just like, you're just making saves. It's funny because right away he hit a breakaway from Matt Barzal, and that's not easy. Matt Barzal is a really high-end player on the Islanders. And it was funny because the first game that Fedotov ever played in the NHL was against the Islanders, and his first save was a Matt Barzal breakaway. That was, I don't know why, just the chances of that happening. They both play against the Islanders, and it's both that same kind of play. They both made the save. It was just an interesting thing that I noticed. But outside of that, I mean, camp is going pretty well for the Flyers. Like, haven't really had any injuries. In terms of the NHL, you saw Line the other night. You saw David Reinbacher. They're both out long-term for the Canadians. Like, that's a huge blow. Flyers haven't really had anything like that. I don't think many teams have. But even just in terms of small injuries, like, they've been pretty healthy, like we talked about early on in this podcast, of just like, how Flyers have kind of gone into this healthy. The guys that were healthy that, or that were injured last year now coming into the season healthy, Coots, Drysdale, Ristolainen, all guys like that. And now you have Ristolainen, who looks really good. He's one of the guys that, we mentioned in episode 2 on just like being healthy and just coming in and like trying to see, what he could play. I'm still in the belief, Mike, that he's one of the guys that maybe towards the deadline, the Flyers could maybe move. You pay him a good chunk of money. He hasn't really proved that he can play. He doesn't put up as many points as he used to. I'm kind of just like at the point where it's like, where do we kind of go from here kind of thing with Ristolainen? But to his credit, he has played well. He's been physical and he's got 2 goals. Which is crazy because I think he's maybe scored 3 or 4 as a Flyer. But in the few preseason games, already got 2 goals. It just seems like just a total reassurance of his career. Like, from coming to Buffalo to Philly, like, there was that whole thing. Like, this guy is just like, they make the trade and they overpaid for him, and then they give him the big contract and all. And now they get him here. and then he just couldn't play. So like, he seems like one of the guys that's like a bigger factor to the Flyers kind of lineup. Torts was kind of talking about him today, saying he's one of the bigger guys going into the season for the Flyers, kind of what happens. Just any thoughts on Ristolainen overall?
Well, I mean, again, for other parts of the defense that have kind of settled into places, it's kind of like, what do you have? What do you have with this guy, and what's he can provide? And obviously, they got him, and then rewarded him with a nice contract, feeling that he could be a big part of the lineup. And it has to be. I guess that's TBD a little bit, right? It seems like you have that with a few spots at forward too, but this is kind of the one spot on defense where they're trying to figure out what they have exactly, and certainly they hedge their bet and as far as contracts and all that, and locking them up and keeping them comfortable in that respect. Now it's kind of his job to do it on the ice. So I don't know, from kind of what you're talking about there and kind of the way it's lining up, it's almost like, well, he's going to have a huge part in if this defensive core is considered successful or not, right? And so. Yeah. That's a big gap in there. I mean, he had Drysdale as an offensive type guy. Eric Johnson now is more of a veteran guy and probably going to be a depth guy. And so they want this guy to be healthy, but you've kind of got a budget, what if he isn't? I mean, you want him to be, and can he be a difference maker? How big a difference maker can he be? Obviously, internally, they feel he could be a pretty nice difference maker, right? And, but that has kind of not shown itself yet on the ice. But
right.
Popping a couple goals in the fall here is certainly a good omen, and hopefully, a sign of good things to come for him.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and again, he's just one of those guys that's like, you never really knew what Risto could bring, because it was like he was offensive, he's a little bit defensive, he's bigger. Now I think he's kind of got his game well rounded. Like defensively, he looks like a totally different defenseman. Bradshaw, I think, really changed him and kind of molded him into a different player. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that kind of plays out.
Right, you got to figure out what he is. What are you? How are you going to be good in this league? You have a lot of tools, but which tools are going to invest and which ones are going to be. So with Bradshaw working with him and trying to figure out, okay, here's how we see that you're going to be the best player in this league. Not only for like this is players want to hear that, not just for this year to be a good year. Again, like we've talked about it before. How am I going to be a player in this league for the next 10 years?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Especially when you can obviously change your game and still get that money and still be able to play too. That's the biggest thing. Okay, so Jet Luchanko, Mike, we talked about this a little bit, and Luchanko is interesting because I think a lot of people have kind of penciled him in to make the team. I am kind of in the realm of like, he needs more time. He's 18. I don't necessarily think he's physically ready. Like he's a very fit player, but it's like to go through a full NHL season, I don't think he's ready for that. I think there's some moments in his game where he looks great. I think there's some moments where he just is kind of invisible at times. Not in a bad way invisible. You just don't really notice him either on the good side or bad side. He's kind of just seems like he's just kind of just like floating along. I do think, before he had that great game in Washington to start the year, he had a couple chances. I think if any other goalie's in that, he probably has a goal or two. And it's like, all right, Jet looks really good. And he gets another chance. He plays 2 more games, both home games. And I didn't really notice him a ton. He had a couple, nice passes in the offensive zone, things like that, but nothing really crazy. I personally don't think he's ready for the NHL. Do you think he's a guy that can maybe come in here and make this team out of camp and maybe surprise some people? Because again, it's, obviously, and we've noted it before, the long road trip to start the season, that obviously the Flyers might have, carry an extra forward or 2, and then maybe a defenseman.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier here, and you said it's been a super healthy camp, right? And
yeah,
I've seen like many times through my, I brought up Bergeron last, Patrice Bergeron, and I think that was in our last one. I might not made it to air, but we had a guy like that just hung around. All of a sudden, he was there at the end, and
yeah,
20 years later, Patrice Bergeron retired as a Boston Bruin, when he started there. So, right. It's almost like he's a player. He's done a good job. He's probably done all he can do, really, and then needs a break. Like almost like we talked about the team being super healthy and and all that. You almost need a little bit of a somebody to go down a little bit to create that little extra room. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you look at his Guelph schedule and see if they're kind of slow, if you feel like it's worth bringing them along. Do you have, do you need to hash out, sometimes you let some other things fall into place. Can you hide a guy? Problem is you got to, he's not waiver exempt. So you like to bring a guy that's on waivers and you have to make a decision, and you don't have to put him on waivers yet, and for the guys on the waivers, they're taking a guy, you can buy a little more time on the guy you might have to expose to waivers and kind of see what happens with the rest of the league and bring them along, and maybe you play them. I don't know. So I don't know. It's a good question, and it's hard to say which one's right or wrong. I think there's pros and cons to each, or you just let them go, send them out the door and say, hey, you were very good in camp. Have a great year in Guelph. We're going to see you in the spring. You're going to get, our goal right now is to have you up here for your nine games. Try not to earn a year, but, and that could change too. And if there's a playoff race or something like that, then it gets a little bit harder to squeeze them in, So, I don't know. I mean, again, you can't fit them on the fourth line, really. Fourth line's really seems to be pretty firm. And so unless you're going to play them on a top 9 thing and you feel like you can play them 15 to 17 a night, it really doesn't make sense. You just let them go back. And I don't see a real big hurry, when it's really, the door's not really that open, why jam them through it?
Exactly.
So
yeah, no, exactly, and that's how I feel too, because I feel like even if the fourth line is set to, there's no point of bringing an 18-year-old to play on the fourth line and play 5-6 minutes a night. I mean, he should be playing with offensive guys anyway. You know what I mean? Like, instead of playing with guys like Delorier, Hathaway. Not that those guys can't score, but they just
it's a different role. And then you throw Cates and throw Cates in there, so you're basically have 4 guys.
Yeah,
you have 4 guys playing on the fourth line, so it's it's I don't know, so it's you talk about the lineup. Unless the door's pretty wide open, I don't really see a real reason. I don't see a real reason to force them in there if you don't have to. But just let them on his way, let them have a great year.
Yeah, and I think this ties back to your point when you were saying last episode that basically, like, they have a lot of guys right now where there isn't as much competition because they don't have as many veterans. You know what I mean? Where it would, like, you look at the roster and you can kind of pencil in the guys in the spots already. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do a lot of like, okay, this guy can make it, but this guy, you know what I mean? There's only like 1 or 2 spots that really open up, and it's like in the bottom 6. It's nothing high. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, I think, what you're saying. And this plays into that because, and last night I was talking to my buddy about this. Like, if you look at Scott Lawton, like, a lot of people have kind of harped on Lawton a little bit, and he hasn't had a great camp so far. And he didn't have a great second half of the season last year. And everyone's kind of just like, I feel like, kind of pushing him out just because everything that's been going on, and they've been getting younger and the rebuild and everything. And Lawton's been here a long time, and that's Philly sports. That happens with every team. They just push out this guy here. But even when you look at it, like, no young guy, in my opinion, has come in and tried to push him out of that spot. Like, they haven't had a guy that's, come in and be like, hey, like, I'm knocking on the door here and taking that. And Lawton, to his credit, he's a veteran, played a long time. I think outside of Couturier, he is the longest tenured flyer.
He was there my last year. He was there too. When I was there in 2013, he was there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like, no one's come in and fought him out for a spot. So, like, at the same time, like, yeah, you want to see young guys make it, but they have to earn it too. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just throw the guys in. And this also ties into the thing with Kolosov, like we were talking about. So a lot of things are kind of going inside here, but I think you get my point. None of the young guys have really come in and taken a spot away from a veteran like that.
Yeah, you have enough middle lineup players that are, nobody's pretty sure. They feel like they're somewhat interchangeable a little bit, and then throw another guy in there, especially, again, like I touched on, the big thing for me is then you've got to, if you keep him, you got to put somebody else on waivers and make a roster spot. And it's, I think the what you have to give up to even, there's like trickle down after you, if you were to give him that spot, there's still fallout. Like, then you're going to have to move another player. And it's, now you're risking that. Maybe after 2 weeks, you're like, we shouldn't have done that, And so some of that stuff, I think, with young players, that, again, that's where you are in the hurry. Like, let's not, you don't have to be in a hurry. And, and a lot of younger guys too. It's hard. They'll come for a flash in the pan, but when you get in the rigors of the season and they're day in and day out, and screws start to tighten, and you're off to whatever a certain start after 10 games, and it's been pretty quiet as a player, or the team's quiet, or the team's a little bit up and down, a little slow starting, then it gets it. Whose ice time's gonna get cut? Probably the young guys. So and the confidence goes down, and so I think. Like, again, you want them here for another 10 or 12 years. You're not so worried about this year. When the door's not like wide open for them, there's no sense in doing it. So
exactly. And again, and I said this before, the Flyers don't have to be good yet. You know what I mean? You don't have to force it if it's not there. And I think one of the biggest things that you mentioned last episode too, Mike, is that from like just being in the video room, like from one or two things going right, and then versus the 9 or 10 that are going wrong once you get to the regular season. That's a huge thing too, and the mental side of that as well.
Yeah, I mean again, we said this isn't a developmental league. Like you can make your mistakes in anonymity. How do I say that word? In junior and even in the American League, so to speak. It's not front page news if you make your mistakes. And so Philly's not an easy town to play in that respect, and there's a lot of people patting on your back when you're a young guy and playing, fighting above your weight here a little bit. You're playing better than everybody thought, but again, it's another thing to have to stay there, and it's not as easy as you think sometimes, and especially if you struggle, a young guy is going to get taught a lot, and then again, you don't have a huge ton of experience at high levels and how to persevere and how to tough your way through things and how to adjust. So it's again, we just go back to the same thing. Like if the door's not wide open, there's no point forcing them through it.
Exactly. Okay. Matvei Michkov, Mike, he looks really good. 2 goals on Saturday. He's got 6 points in 3 preseason games. Had the overtime winner. I think one of the biggest things that I notice so far is just the way the power play runs. I know you mentioned before just kind of guys in that front and the way that like you don't always have to zip it around. The Flyers have been zipping it around, and it's looked better that way. I just think it's a lot better when you can finally run a power play that isn't through the defenseman. The Flyers have always kind of done that. You had Giroux who run it in a way, but it felt like it was more of the defenseman at times. So I don't know. I mean, I think the more I watch Michkov, the more it makes me excited for the future and just the rest of the season too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for the kid. Like he's kind of come in as advertised, and it's sometimes very difficult when you have the big hype, a lot of hype coming in, the hype machine, and it's very difficult. But again, it's the 5-on-5 play looks very like decent two-way. You know what I mean? Again, like there's always going to be defensive moments, but if the offense is there, you're going to be able to live with all that, and then real shot in the arm for the power play to have a real guy that's really enjoying and understands how what to do on a power play, and kind of, I don't know, at the end of the day, I mean, as it filters through, it's probably going to end up, he's going to end up taking more control of it and have the puck in his hands all the time, and everybody will want him to have it in his hands, and so yeah, I mean, it's good to see that, and you see, I guess you're brought over to score goals, right? And a team that's a little bit offensively challenged, so it's always nice to score goals. And again, you come in, and a lot of young guys come in real quick, and that. So again, you kind of see, as the rigors of the season start to kick in, and teams will be wise. Teams are paying attention as to who they've got to be hard on and who they got to key on and stuff. So his mettle will be tested for sure. One night they say, hey, we've got to be real physical. What happens when we're physical on this guy? And does he really like to go in the corners and stuff? And they'll kind of figure out, and obviously every other team's going to try and find, ways to get at him or weaknesses in him or how to expose him a little bit. So, but certainly it's come in as advertised and done probably more than people could have hoped for so far this fall.
All right, Mike. So now we have NHL predictions. We're going to kind of look at some teams here, see who makes the playoffs, see who doesn't. Start with the Metro. I'll go team by team and just give me a yes or no here on these teams. So we'll go New York Rangers first.
Yes. Did I just say yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to say, yeah, if you want to go into it,
I mean, they seem to be, again, Shesterkin a goal, and I seem to be kind of the same team. Didn't really, I don't know if they really lost too much, or so I don't know.
Yeah, I think they will too.
Yeah.
Carolina.
Carolina. I mean, I think just a young core there, and kind of same guys and same situation. So only getting a little bit better management change, but I don't think that should affect too much. But yeah. Like now we start getting a little dicey. I think with the Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Flyers, Devils. I don't think Columbus. I don't think Columbus has a chance. So you can just eliminate them. But so for the next, I mean, for the fourth spot, I think there's 4 teams in there: Washington, Pittsburgh, Philly, and the Devils. And I think, I don't know if Washington. To me, it's Pittsburgh and New Jersey grabbing the 4th spot there.
Okay.
In my opinion, yeah.
Got it. So
and then I don't know, and I don't think Washington's gonna. I don't think Washington can do it anymore. I think they're done. I think Pitt's stars are aging, but they've aged a little bit better than Washington's, and they got a couple more of them. I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I think Washington does make it. I think with all the changes that they made, and they got a lot better. They got Logan Thompson, they got Chikrin, they added some scoring depth. I still think Ovechkin has one more kind of kick left.
Yeah.
The Islanders are too old for me. They just, I don't know. They just don't do it for me. Pittsburgh is interesting. It's so I hate the Penguins, Mike. It's so hard to write off the Crosby, Malkin, Letang, all those guys. They don't have Carlson for a bit. I don't know.
Rust. Rust there. I mean, there's a lot of scarier parts. It's a scarier team to me than
Did Washington?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And I didn't play with Alex, and it just seems like, is Ryan Strong the answer to get him over the? And I'd love to see him catch Gretzky's record. I mean, the fact that you're even bringing this up, the fact that we're even talking about somebody getting close to Gretzky is pretty amazing.
I know.
I feel like it's sliding.
He needs 42 goals. I don't know if he'll get it this year. He might. He had 31 last year, I think.
I thought by maybe December 25 maybe would be the time. Somewhere around Christmas of the next season.
Next season.
Still got to go for 25 this year. I don't know. I hope so. He gets better. He's pretty. I feel bad for the coach here. Like, so every day, I mean, every game they're in the lead and there's an empty net, I'd be having him on the ice. You owe it to the. It's just stuff like that. He'll get it done. Even if he gets 5 or 6 empty netters this year,
he could do it.
Down,
exactly.
You got to have him out there. I mean, you got to help this guy chase. That's a tough thing, but not every coach has to manage that. And those decisions. How we're going to handle this guy, as he gets closer. Anyway,
yeah, no, for sure. To me, Jersey's in. I think they're too good. I think last year was injuries. I think Markstrom was a great addition. I hate to say it, but I do think the Devils are in. And show me. I do think
they're not second to last. The Devils aren't second to last in the conference or in the Metro. No, they should be pushing up top there for sure. Jack and Luke coming in their own. They'll be fine.
Yeah. You think the Flyers make it or no?
I don't know. I don't know. I think they need some help from above, man. You need some of these teams get decimated somehow.
They really need what happened last year again, where a lot of teams get hurt, and it was really just 1 or 2. I mean, they were in 3rd place for more than half the season last year for a long time. So I think that kind of rounds out the Metro. Let's look at the Atlantic. So you got Florida, Boston, Toronto, Tampa, Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, Montreal. With the injuries to the Canadians, I think it's tough. You had Line A, you had Reinbacher. I think Florida's a given. Boston, I have no idea, because Boston for me, Mike, is weird with the whole Jeremy Swayman thing that's going on, and they traded Allmark, and if they don't sign Swayman, then you have Jonas Korpisalo, who hasn't really been a proven starter at all in his career. I think the Leafs are a given. Tampa's tough. You lose Stamkos, you add Gensel. I think they're really top heavy. but they have the best goaltender in the league on their team in Vasilevsky. So I could still see them making it as like a wild card. The Red Wings, I think it's time. I think the Red Wings have to make a push. I think they're right there. They locked up some of the younger guys in Raymond and Sider, and they're just kind of right there. I don't think they're as great in net, but I do think they could squeak in. I'd love to see Buffalo make it, just because they haven't been in so long. Kind of similar to the Detroit Tigers a little bit. I know we were just talking about them before we started. Like, they haven't been in a long time, and the buzz around the city now is probably huge with all that. Ottawa too. I mean, the Atlantic is tough because for years it was just like the top 3 teams. It was just like Toronto, Boston, Tampa, and it was like 1, 2, 3, and then every other team that made it was in the Metro. It was 5 in the Metro, the 3 in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I could see the Sens making it. I think they're better in net. I think they were really injured last year too. They were kind of similar to Jersey, but I think that'll be tough. I think for me, I'd say Florida, Toronto, Tampa. And I'd say Detroit make it in that division.
No Boston, huh?
Yeah, I think if Boston doesn't have a goalie, I think they're screwed.
Yeah. Well, but Detroit didn't get in last year when Tortorella pulled his goalie against Washington, that final.
I was so mad. I was so mad at that night.
Yeah, well, I don't blame him. I mean, he had to do what he had to do. Like, I don't blame him.
The way it happened, like the way it happened, if that game went to overtime, the Flyers still had a chance, and they scored with like 0.3 or like 3 seconds left, whatever it was, to tie it. And I'm sorry. I think if they lost in regulation, the Flyers had a chance, but they tied it, and then it went and then they got a point, and then that eliminated them, and that was before the Flyers even pulled the goalie. Yeah, like me and my buddy were at the game, we're watching it, and we're watching the other one on the phone, trying to see like what's going on, and they ended up scoring, but regardless. But yeah, I mean that was crazy.
Yeah, that was kind of a unique time. Red Wings, I'm not sure. They got Patrick Kane at Christmas time. I feel like he was the lifeline that team needed. You lose Dave Perron. It was a pretty gutsy effort.
Yeah. Tarasenko.
And yeah, I don't. Tampa might be on their way down a little bit. Tampa might be out. Toronto, obviously, they're kind of in their prime. Boston's still so cagey.
Yeah.
Still really good players. Florida, obviously, you wouldn't expect them to drop too far. So to me, I think it's between Tampa and Detroit. I don't know about Buffalo, Ottawa, and Montreal. I don't see much, but I see, kind of. I think it's between Tampa and Detroit for that final spot there. And so one of those might still get a wild card.
Yeah.
If whoever's not in might still get a wild card out of Tampa and Detroit.
Right.
And just John Cooper seems to, I know they're like Stamkos a big loss, and I know Getzel is a great replacement. You're never going to replace Stamkos on the power play, but 5-on-5 probably Getzel's probably a good player there. They're relying more on depth guys now, and they still have that goaltending, and had to still play 27 minutes a night. So there's some good. I mean, so I think it's between Tampa and Detroit for that fourth one, and then whoever doesn't get it, they're a wild card, I think.
Okay. All right. The Central: Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Nashville, St. Louis, Minnesota, Utah, not Arizona, and then Chicago. I think Nashville wins the division. I think with the buzz around them, I think with Stamkos, with Marchessault, he had a lot of goals. I think they were good last year, just in terms of, I think in net they're solid. I don't know. I just see it's kind of similar to Utah. Like I could see Utah making the playoffs, just with the buzz around the city and everyone just kind of going there. It's a whole new thing, and it's like, hey, let's just play well kind of thing, and they end up doing it. I think Dallas is one of the best teams in the league. Probably second best team in the league, in my opinion. Colorado. I could see the Jets, Mike. I don't know. I mean, Winnipeg is weird. They had such a good season, then they were out in 5 in the playoffs. I don't know I never know how to read Winnipeg. I think St. Louis is kind of boom or bust. Like, they kind of have to make the playoffs. I mean, maybe Minnesota, I don't think they're making the playoffs. And then Chicago is that's kind of a given. I think they'll be better, but I don't think they're making it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Winnipeg, I don't know. They're hard. I just don't see them a ton,
Yeah, in the same way. Yeah,
I don't really care to watch them a ton.
Yeah.
Other team, I don't know. Is Nashville? Can Nashville be better than them? Nashville's adding Stamkos. I think Nashville might be a team on the rise. I could see Winnipeg coming out, Nashville moving up, Colorado moving up too. I mean, still have McKinnon, and they're kind of
right.
now. So I got Dallas, Colorado, Nashville, probably Winnipeg, fighting it out a little bit more with. But that's a 20-point drop. I mean, they're not going to have it. There's a 20-point swing there between the Blues and the Jets, and is either one going to make or lose that? Is Winnipeg going to lose 10? Is St. Louis going to gain 10?
Yeah,
to cancel that out.
Because that's like 4 or 5 games right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably have Winnipeg dropping to 4th in that. I don't know if St. Louis is up there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're kind of similar to the Islanders. Like they're real old. They don't have as much left in the tank. What about Utah? You think Utah makes it?
I don't know. I forgot about them. Yeah, and that's being in this. I'm looking at an old list of teams, but
yeah, so am I. Yeah,
I don't know. Still Arizona. I don't know. Yeah, I just. Yeah, I don't know. I know they got who they get on defense, Sergeyev or whatever.
Sergachev. Yep.
Yeah, Sergachev. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I see them. Are they a possible wild card? I don't know.
Yeah, I could see them being like a second wild card team in the West.
Yeah, well,
I don't think they'd go far. I think they'd probably lose first round, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And then the round out, we got the Pacific. This one I think is pretty easy. I think it's the Oilers. I think they'll win the division. I think you have Vancouver. I don't know if the Canucks will have as better of a season as last year. And then the rest of it, I think, is a toss-up because I think the Kings are okay, but now they don't have Doughty. You have Vegas, who's still going to be right there, kind of chomping at the bit. I think the Flames are going to take an even bigger step back. I'd love to see Seattle rebound. They went from 2 years ago, they were 6th in goal scoring. Last year, they were 29th. So something's got to give there, and then they got to go right in the middle. If they could do that, I think they'll get in. I think the Ducks can make a push. I don't think they're there yet. They have a lot of young talent, and San Jose is San Jose. So
yeah, I could see, Vegas jumping over LA, Edmonton winning the division. I agree with that. Vegas jumping over LA and Calgary being a little bit more of a battle. But again, there's another 20-point swing.
Exactly.
Are they 10 worse and are they 10 better? I don't know. That's kind of a good question. Maybe Calgary's a threat to get a wild card, and then Seattle. I don't know. Yeah. Another team.
And then looking just like
that's are kind of the same. I mean, -18, -19 on the year goal difference. So they're pretty close. Same amount of points. It's pretty darn close. So.
Right. All right, Mike. So now we just have trivia. This one's a little different. You've been doing pretty good at these. Now this one,
it's kind of my life.
Yeah.
I don't have to look it up, I guess.
Yeah, that's good point. Okay, so this one is college question. This one's Michigan. So you are first all time in game-winning goals in a season at Michigan, with how many in 1994-95?
Game winners?
Yeah, game-winning goals.
That was my senior year. So I probably had, what I have that year, 36 or 38, something like that. So I probably had game winners. I probably had 8 that year. 8. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
right.
Yep, 8.
Oh my God.
8 game winners.
Like I studied my stat. But.
I'm convinced you have this list somewhere, and I just don't know it.
I did not. I swear to God. I was going to say 7 or 8-ish, because I was like 38. It's got to be, I'm trying to think. You pile up some goals on people, but I think I was pretty consistent that year. In all fairness, it wasn't like 4 here or 4 there, and all of a sudden you're at 35. It's like I chip away at it pretty good. 2 goals here or there. I don't even know if I had that many. I had a couple extras that year, probably. Yeah,
you had 60 points in 34 games, 38 goals, 22 assists.
Yeah.
62 PIMs. So I mean, it feels like it was probably 2-3 points a night, pretty much each night is what it felt like. Yeah,
it was good. It was a fun year. It was really good. We had good players.
I was looking at the rosters.
The roster is pretty darn good.
Yeah. I mean, like Michigan all time has a lot of guys that played.
Yeah.
In the NHL and all that. And a lot of recent guys, Werenski, Kyle Connor, Hughes.
We were. I mean, that like 91 about 90. 8, 9, 91 to about 2000 was a lot. You know, that like when collective bargaining switched, then he had the Larkins and the Rowinskis, and you know, True was there for 2 years because they needed to go. You know, and back before, I think Hagelin, he might have been like a 4-year guy, but
I think so.
Yeah, but then once collective bargaining kind of switched, like these guys were, you know, they got taken up pretty good, and there were a lot of first rounders starting to get drafted. Kyle Connor was probably a guy that was a little better than turned out to be probably a better player than they would have thought, you know. But you know, and then you get the program, you know, the advent of the U.S. national program too. You know, it was based right there. For years, it was based in Ann Arbor, and then it was based in Plymouth, 10 miles away. So it's, you know, where it is now. It's kind of a no-brainer. The kids get it rammed down their throat. It's pretty easy for them to just kind of go over to Ann Arbor. It feels pretty comfortable, you know. So
yeah,
a bit of benefit of that lately for sure.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right. There it is. Episode 3. How are we feeling, Mike? Good?
Feeling great, buddy. Yeah. Don't screw up the microphone this time. No more technical difficulties.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everybody again for all support as always. For, you know, watching, listening. We really do appreciate it. Again, apologies for last episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one a little earlier throughout the week. And I will talk to you guys all again next week. See you guys.
See ya.